Anytime Maritime.
Okay, technical glitch. Good morning, everyone. Happy Tuesday, and thank you for joining us in yet another episode of Anytime Maritime. Do you know that today we are going to listen to somebody who have spoken in the recent PAMI conference in Bacolod? And when I was sent the summary of his talk, oh my God, I was really amazed. I sent back a message to the general manager, Russell, who sent the message to me. And I said, wow, his thoughts are really way, way forward. And so today we are happy to have him here in Anytime Maritime. He is the president or the founder and CEO of Greeny Web, a Singapore-based climate tech startup that focuses on digitalization and decarbonization. And he also serves as a consultant for the Asian Development Bank. We will be talking about the D&D revolution. Can the Filipino Seafarer leapfrog into 2100? Yes, people, we are going to the future, into the future, 2100. That's what we're going to talk about this morning. So without further ado, let us welcome our guest from Singapore, Dr. Ian Chu. Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome,
Thank you,
Dr.
Mary.
Ian Chu. Thank you for joining us from Singapore. And what I said in the intro is very true. I'm so very much eager to hear about your thoughts this morning. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much for having me. It's an absolute delight.
Thank you, sir. So I know you're from Singapore, and you are a very, very busy guy, and I'm really delighted to have you talk to Anytime Maritime. You know, we talk about anything maritime in Anytime Maritime, and let's talk about the D&D revolution that you are talking about. You were at the PAMI event, and maybe you can summarize to us the message that you have given our people and our young school owners and the Filipino audience as a whole.
Yes. So at the recent PAMI 51st convention, I had the absolute honor to share my thoughts on what the Filipino seafarer and what the larger seafaring community may look like in year 2100. And it's a very important conversation because our schools need to start preparing for the year 2100. We don't want to be caught lagging behind other schools in other countries. And so when we talk about preparing for 2100, there are many recurring themes, and the D&D team, at least to me, is the most important. D&D doesn't stand for dinner and dance. It stands for digitalization and decarbonization. We call them the 2Ds or the twin Ds. And they are increasingly important because when we talk about the ships of the future, they are likely to be highly automated, powered by artificial intelligence, and also very green. So this brings into play two seemingly disparate concepts into one unified body, the modern ship. And what that means is that the modern seafarer will need those skills relevant for the modern ship. A very quick example would be seafarers would be less likely asked to do manual work in the ship of year 2100. We believe that IoT sensors, Internet of Things, will be very widespread in a ship, which basically means that we have sensors picking up any and all faults. And we would probably have robotic helpers to man or fix very simple tasks, which means that the value of the seafarer will move up, right? The seafaring vocation will move up the value chain, and we'll see more seafarers doing things like cybersecurity, protecting ships from cyber attacks. We'll see seafarers doing things like troubleshooting of AI models to be able to work hand in hand with artificial intelligence to power and navigate the ships of the future. So this is the message that we had at the PAMI 51st Convention, that to prepare ourselves for the year 2100, we need a radical change in how we develop and how we kind of like carry out our curricula for our students today.
That is really far-fetched, 2100. That's really far. Listening to you, Dr. Chu, I'm thinking, what made you think of this? Why so far into the future? Honestly, sir, when I read the Viber message summary from Russell, who attended your talk, I was like, wow, wow. He was really looking far into the future. So I wanted to understand, why are you thinking about 2100 in 2026? We're looking at 70, what, that's 71 to 74 years ahead. 2100. And maybe my next question would be, how soon must we start working on to 2100 now? But anyway, yes, sir.
I'll just take the second question first. And the answer is actually a single word. We need to start immediately. And this really harks back to my response, the response I'll give for the first question on the rationale of why we need to start immediately. So there are three factors at play. The first factor is that changes that go through the education system generally need a long gestation period, meaning that there is a long time between the initiation of change and the actual implementation of change. This is true for education platforms worldwide because curricula needs to be discussed, it needs to be vetted, it needs to be approved, it needs to be tested, and then percolated throughout the education community. And in the Philippines, where we see that there are an estimated 400,000 seafarers, number could be slightly more or slightly less, but in the hundreds of thousands, we see how an amplified impact will take potentially an even longer period of time. And so the longer we delay the very first step, the longer the entire process stretches. And so doing this immediately also has the second benefit, where we want to talk about a concept I shared during the PAMI convention called the leapfrog effect. And I think that's also eponymous in today's title, right? Where we talk about the transition and we talk about the leapfrog effect. So what is the leapfrog effect? So the leapfrog effect is a theory that I had proposed in the digital sustainability space that is also very relevant to the maritime industry. So what it says is very simple. Basically, there are about three different stages of development at any point in time. All right. There is what we call the baseline standard. There is what we call the futuristic standard, or what are folks who are more at the cutting edge, and there are folks who are lagging, right? But how the leapfrog effect changes this dynamic is we've added a fourth stage. So we've added the futuristic stage, in this case, the year 2100 stage. So if we look at the Philippines and the Filipino seafarer in the present day in 2026, we're at stage 2. So we're at baseline. We're doing fairly well. We're not lagging, but we may not be at the cutting edge also, right? So we're not in both sides. We're at the Goldilocks space, right? In the middle, doing pretty well. But how we can potentially outperform seafarers from other places would be to take this massive leap into the fourth stage, which is the year 2100 stage, right? Because if we want to compete with those who are at the cutting edge, stage 3 today, what happens generally is that we would generally be in a game of cat and mouse. We will be generally playing catch up for the longest of time. So instead of competing in a field where others have already a slight, if not a bigger advantage, why not we redefine what happens in the late future, and why not we prepare ourselves for that? And that's why year 2100 is so symbolic and is so significant. Because if we look at folks who are doing well, slightly better in the seafaring, in the maritime industry today, they already have the advantage for the next 20, 30 years even to year 2050. And if that is the case, Instead of playing catch up, let us now plan for year 2100 and let us develop that skill sets in the next 30 years. And incrementally from year 2050 onwards, regain the advantage, regain the initiative, and then accelerate on to year 2100, where the Filipino seafarer could potentially be the most cutting edge of all.
That really sounds exciting and something that I would really like to see into fruition. Thinking about 2100 makes me reminds me of Dr. Benjamin Hardy. I don't know if you've heard of him. He wrote the book 10x. So what he's saying is to work on today, you must look into the future and already achieving what you plan to see in the future, work on it today. And that is the call of the leapfrog. And now you seem to have research about the Filipino seafarers. We have some 400,000. You talk to the academe, the producers, and the capacity builders for the Filipinos. Do you think, sir, that we are there? Can we get there as a Filipino people if we start immediately? And are you hopeful that it's doable? And can we do it?
I'm very, very hopeful. Being at the PAMI convention, where I met in excess of 50, 60, even 70 different university heads, the heads of department, the heads of private colleges, the university presidents even. And I'm very hopeful because there is that appetite to do better. And one of the biggest indicators for future success is not resting on your laurels. The moment you feel you have it all, that is the moment you start this very insidious downward spiral that begins slowly, but that accelerates in a couple of years' time. But that is something I did not see at the PAMI convention because every single academic, every single administrator I spoke to wanted to do better. They were finding new ideas. In fact, a lot of them were already in discussion for fresh innovation, right? How could they potentially change curricula? Some of the academics I spoke to had already begun discussions in the incorporation of things like artificial intelligence, robotics even, in their curricula. And so I see that there is that desire, right, to do better than yesterday. And that's one of the first good signs. The second good signal is that there is a willingness to also invest. And I think that is something that I saw sparks on and that I would further encourage. Because a lot of the Filipino seafarers, a good number of them, actually come from private colleges. So these are schools that are not government funded. They are run very much like a private business. And in private businesses, there is a tendency for more short-termist business to prioritize current day profit over long-term investment and viability, right? And so I would warn, or rather I would caution these private colleges against adopting such an attitude. I'm very, very pleased to say that I did not see any of that at the PAMI 51st convention. And I would urge them to continue investing in long-term viability because the seafaring vocation isn't going to go away at any point in time. It's not going to disappear in year 2050. It's not going to disappear in year 2100. What will change is what the seafarer does, because you still need people on board ships in the middle of the ocean. You need a reliable person there to be able to fix the problems and get the ship from point A to point B. What changes, therefore, is how the person does that. And so when private colleges and government institutions prioritize long-term investment, they can therefore invest not just in curricular changes, they can invest in expertise where they get futurist experts to come in to brainstorm with them. They can get futurist technical subject experts to come in to train their teachers to amplify impact. And they can also invest in infrastructure of the future. So we're no longer playing catch up. We are being there at the forefront.
I like that, Dr. Chu. Dr. Chu, I also operate ships. No, I'm doing Anytime Maritime as an advocacy, but we connect the Philippine Islands via ferry boats. And one thing I realize is we must have a team. A team like a department looking into the future because we must be having that long-term planning to be able to catch, not the catch up that you're talking about, but really looking into the future. And with the climate change and all the changes happening, like you said, D&D, not dinner and dance, but digitalization, decarbonization, we must have that. So what am I saying? When we start producing capable seafarers with this concept, this must be taken into practice, right? This must be taken in the way we operate the business, not only domestically, more importantly, globally. So yeah, very good, very good. Tickling our minds and opening our minds, and widening our perspective, such that it's not limited. It's not only very short term, not medium term, but really long term. So tell us what you see. You already spoke about the Seafarer of 2100, and at the core of this, of all that you're talking about, is the ESG. So environmental social governance. Tell us more about that, Dr. Chu.
Salty, because when we imagine the ship of year 2100 and the seafarer of year 2100, it comes across as very futuristic, and in many ways it is, right? So how I imagine the ship of year 2100 is this. I imagine a ship with very few, if any, people in it. So the seafarer has been upgraded from a task of many to a task of a few, but a task of a few specialists from a task of many generalists. And how that basically changes is that the seafarer will have in-depth knowledge of the systems that run the ship. And we talk about these systems, these futuristic systems. What are they? It is likely to be a large AI-powered system, either connected to the cloud or more likely on board and on-premise in the ship, that will control things from navigation to the ship's speed to even security warnings. And what this seafarer is there to do is he is there really to ensure that A, the artificial intelligence works well, and B, if there are any problems, he can manually override the system and solve them. Right? There might be one or two more seafarers there as a redundancy, in case the first seafarer falls sick, in case he's off shift. And that would be the modern ship, right? And how ESG comes into play is as such. Because the ships of the future require so much computational power, because they're so AI intensive, they have to do so many tasks for such large infrastructural piece, we see that the amount of energy required will be immense. And with such immense energy requirements, that basically means that when the ship is onshore, she needs to be charged, or there needs to be alternative fuel sources in case the battery is dead, right? So what that means is that we can therefore have a very linear chain collecting computer code of the artificial intelligence, of the digital systems, to the amount of energy it consumes in the middle, and by extension, the amount of CO2 that is produced to generate said energy. So this is what we call the DEC nexus. It stands for data, energy, and carbon. And why the DEC nexus is so important is as ships go from manual devices to digital devices, from your pure analog to pure digital, we see that data will run the ship. And data, as much as we cannot see it, it is with a carbon footprint because it consumes energy, and a lot of time this energy comes from a non-renewable source of power. So what we need to do, therefore, is when we plan for ships of the future, we need to incorporate two things in ESG. The first thing would be green AI models. We're talking about AI models that are highly energy efficient and that can work in a low resource environment, like on a ship in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. The second thing would be what we call as low carbon computer coding, where we can ensure that every line of computer code has a minimal energy footprint and by extension, a low digital carbon footprint.
How interesting. I've never really thought of it that way. But this is really all new and very, very interesting. DEC Nexus. It sounds so technical, but I wonder if there are already companies practicing this, Dr. Chu. Are there companies doing this already? Are
So
there
we
business models doing this?
so we do see adoption of this globally already. The
Oh,
digital
cool.
sustainability low carbon computer coding space is very fresh, but it will be mainstream come 2021, or rather
31.
2100,
Okay.
2100.
2100.
Yes,
Okay. Yeah.
2100. And so
Okay.
what we see right now is adoption onshore. So on
Okay.
adoption of green AI models onshore to power various forms of calculation, and even adoption in the simplest of sensors. For example, using low carbon computer code to power a website. And this is not the end game, right? This is but the beginning, the pilot test to test how this technology works, why it works, and how effective it can be. And after websites, what we see will be diffusion of things like low carbon computer code into things that are more useful in life, like in software, making software truly low carbon. And then onto
Mm.
AI models, and then onto models that are completely disconnected from our cloud. So this is where we see the proliferation will take place. And for academics, for the universities at PAMI to learn about this in year 2026, to be at the forefront of this, confers upon them a huge systemic advantage if they were to act on it.
Oh my God, that's really going a deep dive into technology and marrying the academe and technology and ESG and digitalization and decarbonization all rolled into one. And listening to you, I'm filled with positivity that this can be done. And you're talking to the right people when you talk to the PAMI people, because they are the ones teaching the young people about this. So I wonder how they found you. I wonder how they found you, sir. What got you into talking to PAMI? But of course, we're very happy that happened. But yeah.
So I was actually very delighted to be connected to Pammy through Is One, and a very
Ah,
dear friend,
really?
Marvel.
Yes, yes, yes. Okay, so si Marvel is the one. That's why he's coordinating this talk. I'm so glad that you talked to Pami, and definitely, I think you have tickled their thoughts and their D&D language, so that a revolution can be started, and Filipinos hopeful about it. So there was one example that you said that was sent to me about how the song, was it Despacito, did you say? The YouTube video consumed a lot of energy, and instead of having a video, just send the link. But I'm thinking, when I was reading that, I was thinking, Dr. Chu, that but we're in the revolution of videos, and we like to see and we like to listen. Now if you're saying go back to like the way things are, radio or podcast without the video, people might not like that. So what do you think of that? Did you say
I,
Despacito consumed a lot of energy when people were watching it many times? Can you tell us more about that? Because maybe we're unaware of that and not conscious of that at all, on the energy
got you.
consumption that is.
So let's take a even simpler example, because maybe not everyone listens to YouTube nowadays. Some people use Spotify, they use other forms of streaming. But let's do something that most people, if not everyone, actually does. Email. So a singular email is about 3 to 5 grams of CO2, because you need to have your GPU and CPU, usually CPU, power the email. It's sent to a data center, and that data center sends it somewhere else around the world. Yes. And when you store your email, it's also sent to a data center and stored there, and there's energy required. So each email is 3 to about 5 grams of CO2. And when we attach a single picture, or we attach a PowerPoint deck or a Microsoft Word document to that email, what generally happens is there is a 10x increase in digital carbon emissions, right? On average, that means that your email jumps to 3 grams of carbon, especially if the attachment was a large picture, a high definition GIF or the like. And so when we look at that, we can see how a simple thing, a communication tool that we still take for granted, the email, can contribute at scale to the carbon footprint of our company and our country, right? Because we send emails at scale every day and we receive a ton of it from many corporates. And so this is a very simple example of how digital carbon emissions has grown to be so significant. When we talk about macro picture, the amount of CO2 the digital world produces is as large as every airplane, airport, and airline combined. So we talk about the entire digital infrastructure as something as going digital, going green. But when we look at these macro numbers, we realize that that may not really be the case. And these numbers that I quote you, about 3.7% of global greenhouse gas, which is how much the digital world is producing right then, is a very outdated number. It came from about a 2019 study before COVID-19 changed the way we consume technology. We have rapidly increased by then. And before artificial intelligence, agentic AI, and ChatGPT came along. So we can probably be very confident in a way that, unfortunately, in the present day, in 2026, 7 years after that first report was released, the internet probably consumes more energy than the past, and it probably produces more CO2 than the entire aviation industry in the present day. And this is significant because we're not comparing the digital world with a small subsector. We are comparing it with an entire industry, which is very analogous to the maritime transportation space. So this is why what we're doing is so key, because when we think of ships of the future and how they'll be highly automated, we need to think of how we can decarbonize them as well. We don't want to walk in blind and think that by digitalizing, we are automatically decarbonizing. That is not the case. Because when energy is consumed, someone needs to produce that energy somewhere. And if it doesn't come from a clean source of power, that basically means there is CO2 being emitted for every line of computer code you run on that ship. And so when we think of this, we also think of it from two other angles, right? The first angle really is the limited bandwidth on board a ship. And right now we see that with the advent of Starlink, things have gotten better, but there is still limits to the amount of bandwidth that every single seafarer can have on a voyage, especially on a long voyage across the Pacific Ocean. And why this is key is when you use things like low carbon computer coding, there are hidden spin-off benefits. And one of them is that when a piece of software, when a program is written in low carbon computer code, it is more lightweight. And that means even in low bandwidth environments, resource poor environments in the middle of the ocean, you get better quality service. So that's just one other angle, right? The second angle is when we talk of things in terms of how far a ship can go. Because you think about it this way, if the AI data center in the ship, on board the ship, that powers the ship, consumes half the amount of energy it does, that energy can be sent to the electric propellers instead, and it basically increases the range of your ship. And so we see how low carbon computer coding, ESG on board, has multiple benefits for different stakeholders, whether it is increasing the range of the ship or whether it is providing better welfare to the seafarers.
How cool is that? So we're talking about the coding and the energy consumption of these data centers. And I think it's the first time I think I ever heard this. Dr. Chu, it looks like there's a lot of conversation that must happen over time, on to 2100, but the conversation should start happening now. But for now, I know we don't have a lot of time. For now, definitely, Dr. Ian Chu, you have tickled our minds, open up our eyes on this D&D, not dinner and dance, digitalization and decarbonization, and preparing and leapfrogging the skill set of our seafarers for 2100. and definitely the conversation must go on. So I'm so glad and happy that you started the conversation in PAMI and joining us here in Anytime Maritime. And hopefully it will not be the last, Dr. Ian, too, that you talk to us about this as we go deeper into this talk. I have so many questions in my head while you were speaking, like, okay, is this teachable? Is it being used now? This low bandwidth recording, did you say? Coding, low bandwidth coding. So that must be part of our next conversation, because I know this is a mini Anytime Maritime and you don't have a lot of time. Dr. Ian Chu, it's been a delight to know you and pick your brains about this revolution right now. Any parting message to our Anytime Maritimers, especially the young ones listening to us this Tuesday morning, sir?
Yeah, so I think I have two messages, if I may. The first message is please tune in to Anytime Maritime. I think they are the folks with the great conversations, just like today. All right. And the second message, if I may, is please think more about digital sustainability, how digitalization helps the world, but how digitalization can also negatively impact the environment. And that's why we don't just need digital transformation, we need sustainable digital transformation. And with that, if any of you, of the readers, or rather the podcast listeners, or those watching this video, if you have further questions, feel free to reach out to me as well. I know my tag for today is as the representative of Young Ship Singapore. I have a lot to share about that organization as well. I guess we will have a part two. And I am also representing Greeny Web, which is the company that I run that changes normal computer code into low carbon computer code, the code of the future. So thank you very much, Mary, for having me. It has been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you, Sarah. There you have it. So futuristic, Dr. Ian Chu, and definitely we will have you back because there's more to talk about in this green D&D revolution. Thank you very much, Dr. Ian Chu. We'll let you go. Thank you, Anytime Maritimers. Until next Tuesday, Dr. Ian, do you mind saying Anytime Maritime with me? 3,
Yes.
2, 1. Anytime Maritime. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
Anytime Maritime.
Anytime Maritime.
Anytime Maritime.
Anytime Maritime. Anytime Maritime. Anytime Maritime.
Anytime Maritime.